Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to our second episode, if we can call it that, of quarantine Q&A with Dr. O. Can I first check if you can hear me? Could you kindly just write something in the chat just to say, yeah, we hear you. And we already have a question. Okay, great. Okay, wonderful. Before we move to the questions, just want to make sure that you can hear me. Can you hear me? I'll type it up as well, just in case you cannot hear me. Be difficult to proceed if no one can hear me, and I don't want to just waste your time if you can't. I can see on the screen that there's a little, oh, perfect. Neville, thank you very much for confirming. Well, in that case, let's proceed, given that technology is helping us and it's on our side. So once again, welcome to the second episode of Quarantine Q&A with Dr. O. The structure of today's 60 minutes together is very simple. I'll do a little bit of an introduction to begin with. Then we'll take 5 minutes to pause, slow things down within ourselves, and enter the space of the Q&A. It's a way of relaxing. It's a way of letting go of some baggage so that we can engage a little bit more, a little bit deeper into the experience that we have all chosen to share in these next 60 minutes. And then we'll go into the Q&A itself. So the introduction is very simply, the Q&A has been developed as a response to two things primarily. Number one, stories that I heard from my clients who have continued to see me online during the quarantine, during the lockdown, some of which are very positive, some of which are very negative. At one end of the spectrum, you have individuals who have rediscovered family time, who have rediscovered good sleep, who have rediscovered family dinners, who have rediscovered playing with their children and being more connected and closer to their partners. At the other end of the spectrum, you have individuals who are struggling with isolation. You have individuals whose mental health issues have been exacerbated by staying at home and not being distracted by what I like to call the many cravings that we typically have around in daily life. You have individuals who are arguing more frequently with partners because of some underlying issues that now that we are together at home, we can't escape, we can't hide from. So the spectrum is very broad. And I thought that there was a lot that could be done to help individuals on the whole spectrum to perhaps address some questions that might have popped up. How do we deal with this? What does this mean? Can I do that? And so in an effort to help more, in an effort to support whoever is interested to tune in and listen to this, I decided to start this Q&A so that hopefully I could address your questions, whatever your circumstances. And this is why it has been created. For those of you who don't know me, my full name is Oberdan Marianetti. I'm a clinical sexologist and a psychologist. And today I am based in Singapore working with clients who present a variety of questions and conditions. And I think the common denominator among many of them, not all of them, many of them, is that they are suffering. And in my opinion, both personal and professional, is that a lot of the suffering they bring is unnecessary. And so if you wish, it's my purpose through my work to alleviate the unnecessary suffering that exists out there. And I do so just primarily through clinical practice, and I also do it by applying the Wim Hof method and my psychology knowledge in a retreat that I developed called Om Ice. So that's a little bit about myself and why we are tuned in today doing this. I can see a few more people have logged into the chat, so thank you. And before we move on to the Q&A, if you already have questions, feel free to type them. You would find the chat on the right of your screen, typically, if you are on a laptop or a desktop. I'm sorry, I don't know exactly where you find it. If you're on mobile, I've never used it myself. I'm quite new to this technology. And you just type up and it should show up with your name next to the other messages that I can see have already come in. We'll move into the 5 minutes relaxation. And the way we're going to do today is purely 5 minutes of silence. My invite is that you pay deep and close attention to your breath. I will guide the first minute or so, and then I'll let you be in silence for the remaining 4. At the end of the 5 minutes, you will hear a little alarm going off, quite gentle sound, to open us up to the Q&A, and then we can get started. Enjoy the 5-minute silence with a bit of an intro from me. So, if you are comfortable where you are, sitting or lying down or standing, if you feel comfortable in your privacy, go ahead and close your eyes. Otherwise, you can keep them open. That's perfectly fine. If you are lying down, feeling completely relaxed and having the sofa or the bed or the floor or wherever you're lying down, holding your weight, letting go into that support, knowing you don't have to carry yourself for the next few minutes. And if you're lying down, sitting straight, comfortably, with your legs on the floor, with your hands on your knees or lap, and just relaxing into your breath, noticing as the air comes into your lungs and then leaves your lungs. Noticing whether you are breathing through your nostrils or through your mouth. Perhaps you are inhaling through your nostrils and exhaling through your mouth. Maybe you're inhaling and exhaling through your nostrils. Whatever it is, just notice your breathing. And as you pay attention to it, notice if the breathing is deep into the belly or high up into the chest. Notice whether it's slow and purposeful or whether it's quick and shallow. Paying attention to the temperature of the air entering your body. If you pay close attention, you might notice a little bit of cool as you inhale and a little bit of warmth as you exhale. I'm going to leave you to your breathing now. My invite is that you pay attention to breathing in a relaxed manner as fully as you can, and then exhaling slowly and as long as you can. Okay, that's our 5 minutes. I'd like to start actually by describing a little bit why that's important. 5 minutes of silence, even though it wasn't 5 minutes, I was talking quite a lot, can feel quite long to most people. And one of the exercises I give to some of my clients who are first learning to concentrate and do mindfulness practice is to take up to 3 minutes to look at the flame of a candle without ever leaving the sight of the flame. For many, is very, very difficult. Why is it important to do these 5 minutes as I like to do them? And why could it be uncomfortable? And perhaps what are the lessons that this can teach us about the quarantine? Most of us tend to run a daily life that is a endless demand, usually of external requests coming from all angles. Our children, our partners, our bosses, our colleagues, the government, the religious institution. We all have plenty of things to do that keep us busy and keep us running from one place to the other. Now, while this is good because it keeps us productive, it keeps us engaged, it keeps us excited if we like what we're doing, these things also have the tendency to become distractions. Distractions from what, you might wonder? Distractions from ourselves. We have become so busy, we have become so thin on the amount of time that we have at our disposal that even without realizing it, very, very often the first price we pay is ourselves, in the shape of giving ourselves time, doing the due self-care that we require. Could be physical, could be emotional, could be other ways. And so we become slowly detached, slowly numb, slowly unaware of where we are and what's happening inside us. And this is an absolute critical step to a fulfilling and satisfying life, being aware of oneself. Because if we don't know where we are and indeed where we are going, it's difficult to intervene to do what's necessary to adjust the course. And so taking these 5 minutes daily, even, can be very important to reconnect to oneself, to rekindle the awareness, to get a sense of where we are and where we're going. Why might it be uncomfortable, and what can we learn about it in the quarantine sense? It might be uncomfortable because many of the distractions that we have in place are a very skillful design of our mind to cover up the things that we are scared of, that we are worried about, that we are ashamed about, that we feel guilty about. And so we get busy as a way of not really looking at the things that we deeply know we should be looking at. And it could be simple stuff. It could be anything from, I don't know, let me think. I've been planning to tidy up my documents and I've been putting it off for weeks or months, all the way to, I know I should break off the relationship I'm in because it's toxic and it's killing me and my partner and everybody else involved, but I better not look at it because it's too difficult to look at. And so these distractions, or what I call cravings, we crave because we don't want to sit down and do the work. And so it's uncomfortable because when someone asks you to take 5 minutes of silence, immediately, whether you are aware of it or not, the voices, the emotions, they're all coming up. They're all trying to get your attention because your attention has been elsewhere all this time. And so it becomes difficult for them to be heard so that you can intervene where necessary. And what could we learn from this about the quarantine? Well, the quarantine for many, many of us, in wherever we are in the spectrum I described at the beginning, the very positive at the very end or somewhere in the middle, have been forced by this situation and by the conditions we find ourselves in to look more carefully, more closely, more intently to ourselves, to our relationships, to our parenting styles, to the friendships we've chosen, to the job we have. My God, the job comes up so often in my conversation with clients. And therefore, we're all of a sudden sitting straight up in front of these very things that life pre-COVID-19 so skillfully made us ignore. And because these are the things that usually are unfinished and therefore painful, that's one of the reasons why so many of us are somewhat struggling with this isolation, slower pace of life, disconnection from some of those very frequent distractions, as previously mentioned, like work and other things. So pay attention to gifting yourself with 5 minutes. Literally, it's all that is necessary to start. Gifting yourself with 5 minutes a day to just sit there, quiet, breathing, paying attention, whatever comes up, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Just noticing. No need to do anything with it. Oh, look, there's a thought about the presentation I have to deliver tomorrow. Okay, well, I'll deal with you later. Thank you. Now I'm breathing. Whatever comes up, just noticing and letting it go. All right, I'm going to delve into the Q&A and very quickly take a look first at what everyone is saying. Hi, Dr. O. Since the lockdown started, the fridge is repeatedly and convincingly inviting me. So I have gained 2 kilos. Why can I not stop overeating? Oh, interesting. Okay. Let's see if there's any other questions. I have come across a few people who have gained weight during. Oh, okay, fancy that. Similar question. I've come across a few people who have gained weight during this period of time too. Oh, okay, it's a comment on the previous. And then we have, hello, I love the 5 minutes. Thank you. Oh, you're very welcome. I agree with the 5 minutes of quiet time, but lack the discipline to do so at times. How to make it more consistent. Okay, so far we have 2 questions. We have the question and the following comment on the overeating, and then we have the question on how to make more consistent the time off for ourselves. The overeating actually is a perfect example of what I just explained in terms of what I call cravings. Cravings are all of those things that we engage in that are designed by our mind to distract us from ourselves. Very simply put, anything we engage in that is designed to distract us from paying attention to ourselves. Now, at one very, very extreme end of the spectrum, there are very serious conditions like drug addictions and alcohol addictions, conditions that are completely destructive of one's own individual life and the people around who are affected by it as well. And the belief that I buy into and that I work with is that even those very extreme addictions are foundationally a distraction from paying attention to oneself, gone completely array. Now, you might be wondering, why do we want to distract from ourselves? For the reason I mentioned earlier, because whether we like it or not, we all carry a sense of discomfort, a sense of shame, a sense of guilt, a sense of disgust for parts of us that we have witnessed at one point or another of our life and that we no longer enjoy or have never enjoyed looking at, being with, bringing to the surface because maybe society told us it wasn't acceptable. Maybe school told us, maybe our parents told us, our siblings, our peers, our religion. I don't know. But the point is, we carry something we don't want to witness because it's too painful to watch, it's too painful to witness, it's too risky to bring it to the table. Therefore, we hide from it and we need something to distract ourselves. Now, this pain needs to be dealt with. And so something like drug addictions, alcohol addictions that really cover it up are easy to understand. But I have come across plenty of people, especially in my corporate days, who use cravings, who use distractions that society deems as positive and actually tells you, well done, Oberdan, you're a champion, you're a soldier, keep going, we love you, keep doing that. But actually, it's all bullshit because it's a cover up for even more cravings that collectively we are colluding to keep alive. And one example is work. I have heard countless, I don't know, probably in the thousands, stories of people who typically in corporate come with this mentality of working 12, 14, 16-hour days and like flying the flag of the relentless person who never stops and is so productive that the world admires them and cherishes them too, but cheers them on as the leading example we should all live by. I'll say it again, technical term, bullshit. Because those people who eventually, not always, but often become senior employees of these corporations, C-level employees, CEOs, CFOs, CMOs, C-whatevers, are often the people who come to sessions complaining that their life feels totally empty, complaining that they've worked so hard, they've done everything the system told them, they studied hard when they were kids, they behaved well, more or less, when they were growing up, they worked as the organization required them, hard and beyond the call of duty. They've achieved everything. They've become the top of the organization, the top of the industry. And why do I feel so empty? And why has my family estranged me? Why do I have a divorce bill that has almost killed everything I accumulated over this hard work over the last few decades? So I'm trying to illustrate that even something as work that society is colluding to let us believe is our raison d'etre can actually become a craving, can actually become a distraction. I quote clients who in sessions say, well, I know I should go home at a certain point, come 6 o'clock, I'm done. But you know what? I'd rather do another hour or two in the office than go back home and face the music. Whatever the music is, the music could be a partner with whom there are some current disagreements. It could be a chaotic household. It could be abuse. It could be a whole variety of things. But again, beware of the activities and the things we engage in that take over your awareness and become an easy distraction for the mind to move away from paying attention to ourselves. And so, coming to your question around eating in general, or overeating as the case might be, for some, usually, for some new people, now that they are at home with the fridge consistently, convincingly, and repeatedly calling for them, is because we have now lost many of the cravings, many of the distractions that we had before. And these distractions, again, they are medicines. They numb us from our pain. So early you had a routine. You wake up, you do your morning routine, whatever that might be, including exercise, breakfast, getting dressed, washing, whatever. Then you have the commute, which has its own distractions and routines. And most of these things, we're so habituated to them that we can do in autopilot. We don't even have to think about it. We can just go on with it and blindly find ourselves in the office going, how did I get here? And so we lost that. Then, of course, we're at work. For those who work, I can give you some examples of those who don't work, but those who work, we're at work, and hey presto, all the demands are going to start coming in. The boss coming to your desk, the 100 emails popping up and giving you alerts left, right, and center, the deadline arriving out of the blue, the regulators coming up with some new idea, waking up in the morning, and all of a sudden you find out you have to change something in your project, whatever, it doesn't matter. But these are all in a way necessary because they are designed within the system you occupy, and if you don't follow them, you're not part of the system. But while they are necessary, they are habitual and they have become often distractions. We have lost the large majority of these medicines, of these distractions during the lockdown. And so the brain is now craving for something else to do, to not do what I need to do, which is to look after myself, to slow down, to sleep more, to have a kind conversation, a loving conversation with my partner, with my kids, with my parents, with myself, whatever. And so whether it is eating or whether it is TV, I was reading a few weeks ago that broadband providers had to make adjustments to their service because demand had gone up so far for streaming services that the system almost couldn't cope as it was. And so they had to make adjustments. I heard another article that Netflix had to make adjustments to the quality of their streaming, which they had to downsize a little bit because the demand for super high quality stream from the number of clients that has spiked up exponentially was not suited for the systems and the infrastructure they had. So it doesn't matter whether it is eating, it is Netflix, it is arguing and then berating each other, or it could be sex, or it could be reading, or it could be obsessively cleaning the house. It doesn't matter what it is. It is very easy for us, when distracted, to easily reach out for additional distractions just to fill the void that work and all of our usual habits have left behind. I promised I would give an example for the people who don't work. Well, you see, even if you don't work pre-COVID-19, you still had your routines. And so one very simple example that I hear quite frequently from clients who are in relationships and in lockdown, where one partner didn't work and still doesn't work, one easy comment I hear is, before COVID, once my partner left for work, I had my things, I had my habits, I had my routines. Now my partner is around. This has thrown me off guard. I don't know how to adjust. I don't know how to handle it. Stresses me out. And so, even for people who are not working usually and who might have spent typically more time at home, there's still a need for adjustment because their habits, their routine, their medicines and distractions have been somewhat taken away. And so they too might reach out for Netflix, sex, reading, eating, exercising, cleaning as the easy replacement to do that. Now, some of these things, please, 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 are good because people have taken on exercising after not exercising for years. People have started having sex after not having sex for months or weeks. People have started talking to each other in a semi skillful way, but constructively to their partners after not doing so for months or years. So I'm not suggesting that everything we take on is a distraction or is a medicine because we are lazy and we don't want to pay attention to ourselves and do the work. Not at all. What I'm saying is those activities where you could put the word over behind it, before it, rather, overeating, over reading, over exercising, over TV watching, over whatever, where you know the activity has begun taking control of your behavior. So you don't control it anymore. It's calling you. You have to do it. I have to watch the next series. I have to clean the next cupboard. I have. With that sense of lack of control, those are the things that I am inviting you to observe, which are starting perhaps to take over your conscious awareness of where you are heading, and the things that you might want to do to be with yourself, to do the work, to grow, to heal, to declutter the emotions and the mind so that we come out of this COVID-19 disaster, pandemic, opportunity, call it whatever you want, refreshed, anew, reconnected to ourselves. I'm just going to check for additional questions, and I need the aid of this wonderful technology called glasses. Oh, there's nothing else that came in the meantime. Okay. Maybe you're digesting the long chat and the long answers that I've provided. And I'll keep an eye if more questions come in. In the meantime, maybe I'll give you a reflection that has come up for me during the week. Last week, Wednesday, the first Q&A session we did was the first session ever that I did on YouTube Live, like we're doing today. And a few questions came in. I had no idea what was going to happen. I have no idea what questions were going to come in. And I think 3 or 4 questions came in. And as I started answering, I noticed a pattern in my own answers as I was listening to what I was saying. And I reflected on that during the week. And so I want to share a very quick reflection with you now before I move to the next few questions that have just come in. And the reflection was this. I found that most of the answers, if not all of the answers that I was giving last week, they almost all revolved around 2 key ingredients to effectively and skillfully deal with the sense of isolation and the byproducts of the quarantine and the lockdown. And the 2 key ingredients were routine and self-awareness. Now, self-awareness actually can be best described by everything I shared today, and the importance to really stay centered, especially in moments of pressure and stress and of deep change, to really stay present to ourselves, because it is when we are most connected to ourselves that we are also more connected to our innate power, and therefore we are in the best place to be of service to ourselves, our loved one, and the community. So, awareness of self, key ingredient in everyday life, especially in moments of pressure. And the second thing that had come up was routine. Routine, the theme was the need to create repetitive patterns that keep life simple. So, in the same way in which when we have a child at home, especially babies and toddlers who are in those early stages of life where structure is a really important pacemaker for the child to develop a sense of safety and comfort, we need the same. There's a part of us that needs to feel safe and comfortable in who we are, what we do, and how life unfolds. When chaos is thrown into the mix, like a COVID-19 pandemic, and we're all forced to stay at home and blah, 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 all the things that we shared earlier, having a routine, or if not having one, creating one, can create that sense of pace that makes it easier to be closer to ourselves, to stay present and aware of ourselves. And as I mentioned earlier, the byproducts of that would be very positive. So that's the reflection I wanted to share from last week Q&A that came up for me during the week, and I thought I'd share today. So in the meantime, the following came in. How to help kids to make sense of this period? Oh, what a wonderful question, and what a difficult question. And then the next one, which came in Italian, was come conciliare lavoro in quarantena. Basically, how to balance being in lockdown and the responsibilities of work. Okay, I will go in the order that they have come in. Or maybe not. I'll go with the work first because it's an easy connection to what I just said and it's part of the same. So it's a quicker answer. And then I'll move to the kids, which is a different mental space for me as well. And I want to give it a good shot. How to balance the work commitments while at home, and I'm assuming most likely telecommuting. I wrote a piece about this not long ago, where I was describing my continuing clinical services during the quarantine. And one of the things I mentioned was the importance of creating the space. Actually, this is where I am now. This is my home office. Creating a space that most importantly signified office work, basically a demarcation between work and private life. So not all of us have the luxury of an additional room that they can turn into an office. I appreciate that. But even just setting up a corner of an existing room that we treat as office can begin to create the space gap so that we don't feel we are constantly at work, even when we are at home having to telecommute. The second suggestion I would make is every morning when I come to the office, I actually dress up. I put my shirt, I put my jeans, and I sit down at my desk as if I am at the office. And it'd be easier for me to just step out of the lounge or my bedroom or the kitchen in my t-shirt and sit down and do work. But I want to avoid the psychologically I am mixing things up. I want my brain to understand that I'm at work, I have certain demands, I have certain duties, I have certain responsibilities. I will do that. Then I'm stepping out of work, therefore I'm now back in my psychologically private space, which is sacrosanct. It's private, and therefore I don't want necessarily to mix up with the two. So the final and quick answer is dealing with telecommuting at work while in quarantine. I think my answer is make sure that as much as possible there is a psychological and, where possible, a physical demarcation for where your private life ends and work begins, and vice versa, so that you can move more readily between the two spaces. Okay, there's another question that came in, but I'm going to move to the kids first. In the meantime, the last question is, in this strong period, is the fear of the other or the possibility that you can't of no, okay, hold on. In this strong period, is the fear of the other, of the possibility that you count on us? It is preferable to try overcome this fear or to indulge it, not to add more stress. I'm not sure I'll add the question, but I'll come back to it before we close. We have another 15 minutes. So, how to help kids make sense of this period? This is a difficult question because it has multiple layers that have to do with the kids, and multiple layers that have to do with the parents, and multiple layers that have to do with the interaction between the kids and the parents, not forgetting the fact that the institution that these kids are interacting with, namely and primarily school, are also still involved. So how to help kids make sense of this period can be tackled from many angles. Can be tackled at a practical level, how to make sense of the fact that they're no longer going to school, the fact that they are constantly at home with mom and dad and cannot physically interact with their friends, how to make sense of the fact that they are locked down. Why can I not go out? So psychologically helping them make sense of the idea of not being free to do the things I did earlier. Helping them make sense of the relationship with parents, who all of a sudden are no longer just parents, depending on the age of the kids. Parents now might have also turned into teachers, because maybe the school is engaging the parents, as I know it is the case in some places and with some schools, to support the learning process. So now all of a sudden we're having to help them make sense of a completely new relationship with mom and dad, where they're not just mom and dad, they become my surrogate teachers. So it's a very difficult question to tackle because there are so many angles, and I'm not exactly sure which angle to take. So I will give a very generic answer that hopefully can be applied to all of the subdomains, but most importantly that are child-centered. So the assumption I'm making here is that the priority is the child and making sure that they are okay, because we as adults have more flexibility, have more resources, and therefore we can be more adaptable. Not all adults, but ideally that's the status quo for most people. So I mentioned earlier that children, especially very young children, so forgive me for being generic, but I don't know all of your children's age, so the question might be more or less applicable to them and to the circumstances you're all in. But even adults, therefore it is a little bit applicable to everybody. We have inside a child who requires a sense of safety and a sense of comfort. And I don't mean it comfort as when we say we're not coming out of the comfort zone with the negative connotation that has. I mean it in a positive sense. We require a space where we feel life is safe, the world is safe, I'm comfortable, I do not need psychologically like this, constantly looking around, waiting for threats to hit me, and then being scared and fearful that I might not know how to handle it. Now, the quarantine situation for children who, depending on their age, might rely more or less on the routines, on the structure of home, school, this is play, that's study, that's whatever learning, that's etc., etc. This might have been thrown into disarray, and therefore they might be confused. So, step one that I think is important to help them make sense of things is to appease their confusion with some of the basics. And some of the basics for kids, and again, depending on age, but it might help everybody, is to remind them that mom and dad are still there, that love is still around, that the changes that are taking place are something that together we can all handle and that we can all make sense of together, even though it can be confusing. We'll work on it together, and there's always a safety net called home, called parent, called family, called whatever the safety net might be. And so, providing that sense of reassurance that despite the confusion, the basics, the foundations of warmth, love, safety are still in place, can be a really beautiful blanket for the child to hold on to when they are getting confused about why can I cannot go out? Why can I not go out and see John next door or Mary downstairs at the playground? It can really be helpful. And the other thing, which kind of connects to what I've just said and is more age specific again, could be to remind the children that if they have any questions, you are there to take the questions and to feel comfortable in these moments of confusion to ask any questions, even silly questions. And I say so because, especially if as a parent you are experiencing a sense of distress yourself due to the COVID lockdown, it is very likely that your children can sense it. Children are amazing at tuning in to the energies of the system and decide how they have to adjust to it to not overburden the system. And so, an example could be a parent who's over agitated by one thing or another and has become more irascible or irritable or angry or loud at home, and the children noticing that something has changed. Now, the confusion then might come that, hold on a second, have I done something wrong? Why is dad all of a sudden angrier and more upset and more agitated? Oh, maybe it's because I'm asking these questions, or maybe because I'm feeling stressed, or maybe because the other day I cried that I couldn't go and see John in the playground, or maybe it's because I cannot go to school and I miss it. Okay, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to ask anymore. I don't want to make mom and dad upset. And so all of a sudden, the child internalizes that there might be something wrong in the system because they've done something wrong. So once again, reassuring them that if they are feeling any confusion, discomfort, or some emotional response, they can always come to you, and that regardless of the way you are, together you can handle it, and you can address the questions, and you can do whatever is necessary to restore the love, the warmth, the comfort, and the safety. So those would be my generic recommendations on how to help children make sense of it, even though, again, without the specifics of the age and with the multiple dimensions of dealing with children in this situation, I'm not exactly sure how to be more specific. And if there is anything more specific, just let me know in the chat and I will address it. Now, you might have heard the gong, which just went off. That's the 10 minutes gong. In fact, now it's 8 minutes left. I will see if I can address the last couple of questions, and then we can bring it to a close. Okay, in this strong period is the fear of the other, of the possibility that you count on us. I'm sorry, this is a question coming from Paula. I'm not exactly sure what your question is asking in the first part, but I can answer the second part, even if I don't understand the first part. Is it preferable to try and overcome this fear or to indulge it and not to add more stress? I think it's important to acknowledge and notice our emotions. So overcome cannot be feeling the fear, look at the fear in the face and go, no, I'm strong, I don't feel the fear, I'm gonna go forward. The fear is there because it's telling us something. The emotions in us come up like the dashboard in the car. The reason that the lights come on is to tell us, hey, something is wrong with the car, you have to pay attention. The same is with emotions. So overcoming them, yes, if we are processing them, dealing with them, and then understanding what we need to do about them. That's a good way of overcoming fear. The second way of overcoming, which is to look at it and then go, I'm going to go ahead and pretend it's not there, which is your second format, which is ignoring it, doesn't help. Now, it might help momentarily because the situation requires your attention and giving space to fear is not the right thing to do. But ignoring it over the long term, like any other emotions, good and bad, might actually build up and create even more problems. So my suggestions with any emotions coming up, for whatever the reason, is notice the emotion and pay attention to what is the emotion asking me to do? What is the emotion pointing me to that I need to pay attention and address? And then dealing with it as appropriate to the circumstances, making sure that we don't completely ignore it or sweep it under the carpet. Thank you for framing it to the three aspects of the child, parent, and interaction between the two. This is very helpful. You're very welcome. Final question from Blue27 White. Thank you for your question. For me, the most difficult bit of the situation is not beats myself up when I realize that I'm not, I see, concluding as much as I would like. I see. So the question basically is, the most difficult bit is while I'm in quarantine, there are times when I am not as productive as I could be. And when I notice that I have not been as productive, I beat myself up. You know, Blue27 White, this is a very, very common comment that I get from my clients during this period. People who expect themselves to operate at the same pace, at the same productivity level of what they did before, and then feeling guilty or angry or ashamed when they don't. Please realize the circumstances are unique, and it makes it nearly impossible to be as productive as before, in part because the situations have changed, in part because of ourselves. So from our perspective, let's start with the system. The situation has changed means if earlier you were productive 8 hours a day, and all of a sudden you are no longer able to do it because 3 hours a day you're having to be teacher with your kids, your productivity is going to go down. If earlier you were super productive because at work you had fast computers, great infrastructures, colleagues to ask questions to, and now you have your slow laptop, no colleagues to interact with quickly, an infrastructure that doesn't support your ability to produce, then again, your productivity is going to go down. Now, these two are examples of basically something we have to accept and live with and let go of. The circumstances have changed. There are some things we cannot reproduce from before COVID to keep us as productive. So when it comes to those things, if they are the reasons why you're not being as productive, no need to beat yourself up because it's not your fault. And maybe within the circumstances, you are doing your best. The second aspect of the question, of the answer rather, is that there might be a genuine slowing down in you that is driven by the circumstances where you don't feel so motivated, when you don't feel so pushed, when you don't feel so excited about the things that you're doing. That's also very understandable because you've now lost all the distractions and the cravings and the medicines I spoke about earlier. You are paying attention and you are forced to see things coming up, which might take time, take attention from you away from the work that you have to do to deal maybe with the sense of sadness, with the sense of depression, with the sense of fear. Maybe all of a sudden you're waking up going, why the hell am I doing this job? I hate what I'm doing. Or why the hell am I not doing more in this job? I love doing this. I should work harder when I'm going back to full speed in the office and so on and so forth. I don't know, but maybe there's processes happening in you that are taking energy away from what's before your productivity. But perhaps that's a sign. Maybe it's a sign that the things that you are paying attention to need your focus. Even if you are lounging on the sofa doing nothing, please remember, everyone, doing nothing is doing something called nothing. And we all need rest. We all need the quiet time to pay attention, to notice, so that we can realize where we are, realize where we want to go, and do the things that we need to be skillful in doing that. So we have about 30 seconds left. I'll see if anything else has come in just to wrap all up and close it. Very interesting, thank you. I see a final question also came in again in Italian, and I've kind of addressed a little bit broadly in my previous answers, but we only have a few seconds left and I want to be respectful of your time. We schedule 60 minutes and we'll keep to 60 minutes because I know you all have other things to get on to. So I want to say thank you for tuning in and thank you for your questions, without which we couldn't have made the hour what it was. I really hope it was valuable for you, and we'll meet again next week, Wednesday at 6 p.m. Singapore time, and you will find the live video on my channel, and I will be sending out the link through the usual platforms. For now, I wish you a good morning, a good evening, or a good afternoon, wherever you are. Lots of love to you all. Bye now.